I wasn't able to get through, I would have had to taken this stuff forever. And when we think about human behavior, part of it as well is understanding that we're human. We're ebbing and flowing. We're going to have different challenges,
Yeah.
It's just that I love the challenges. Like, that's like what I try to help people understand is like, I love the challenges. I created these challenges. We kind of dove in and we got to see how the perceived restrictions that this individual has gave them more opportunities than I have. And it's very humbling to see because all we're doing is seeing the other side. And so I really try now, my goal is to just catch it, right? So it's like if anxiety comes up now, it's like, okay, well, let me catch it. What's that inspiring thing for you? And
Mhm.
then you move forward and it's like, yeah, that's what I want. This is not an apples to apples situation. Like,
Mhm.
you are not going to have the business this individual has. It took them 55 years to get there.
Hey, family, this is the thethrivewellJourney. Look, life's too short to just get by, and 2025 is the year to persist. We're here to grow, build, and thrive. This podcast is all about powerful stories, real talk, and practical steps to help you level up in every area of your life. Now, if that sounds like something you need, don't just watch, be a part of the journey. Let us know you're here. Do us a favor. If you're listening on the podcast platform, download the episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. And as we always say, let's make thriving our new norm.
Yeah. Beat up, bullied, and dunked on. Beat up, bullied, and dunked on. Bullied and dunked on. Yeah. Let's get it.
Hello, on today, thethrivewellJourney, we are joined by Carly Pepin, an international speaker and consultant specializing in human behavior. Carly empowers people like you and I to transform the stories they tell themselves about their flaws, unlocking a life of purpose and fulfillment. Now, through her deep understanding of human behavior, she helps others uncover their true potential and design lives guided by authenticity and intention. And I'm really excited to have you on. Carly, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. One of the things I think is a very interesting topic is human behavior. What inspired your journey into mastering human behavior?
Yeah, so definitely on my own challenges and struggles and not understanding myself, who I am, like why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And it kind of took me on a deep dive to find individuals who can help me understand those things so I could create the transformations in life. And then it just, it spirals. When you love something, you really want to share it. And
Yeah,
then it just spirals into like, let's make a business out of this. Yeah.
right. That's kind of how that's kind of how entrepreneur journey starts. Like if I'm interested in something, then how can I make a business out of it? Can you just share like a defining moment when you realized the power of transformation or transforming personal narratives was, a thing for people?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely remember when I left the United States for a little while and I lived in Australia for a year. And I had left Los Angeles just because I perceived that Los Angeles was the problem, right? Like that's what I thought was the challenge, which I know a lot of people do, but now it's one of
Mhm.
my favorite cities.
I love
I
LA.
call it home. I love it so much. So it was interesting. So I moved thinking that that would solve the problems. When I got to Australia, like everything just followed me. And then I realized all the things that I was blaming LA for were actually distractions from what was going on within, right? So it was
Mhm.
just distractions. And I really had to like face that part of myself inside. I wound up finding my first coach that was focused on human behavior. The traditional therapies just did not work for me. It just didn't work, which I know it works for some people, it just didn't work for me. So I
Right.
found my first coach who specialized in human behavior. And within the first few months, my anxiety like immediately shifted, which was amazing. And it was just focusing on living in my values, understanding my purpose, like understanding that it wasn't ever missing. It was always there. I just haven't been giving the time and energy to it. And that actually shifted my anxiety. So I had been on anxiety medication every day and I just stopped taking it, which was a little crazy as well. Obviously, like, I was trying to wean off of it slowly, but one day I was like, I think I can just get off. And I actually just got off. So that was crazy for me. So it was all these things that I was told was not possible. Like I wasn't able to like get through. I would have had to taken this stuff forever. And then it's like, yeah, everything was just fine. So that
Yeah.
was amazing. And that was when I was like, who teach me more? Like, who else are your teachers? What else can I learn? And how do I also do what you do? Yeah.
You talk about being on anxiety medication. So I'll just be transparent. I'm actually on anxiety medication.
Yeah.
I was on it before, and then I just stopped. And then I went through the issue of dealing with cancer, and then
Mm.
they prescribed me. I forgot whatever the name of it is. that's
One
how
of them, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how connected to it I am.
Go ahead.
Um, when you got off of it, like what was your mindset about getting off of it, and what was the thing that said, you know what, I don't need this anymore?
I just was feeling so much better, and I wasn't because so my thing as well is I didn't want to become reliant on it. I remember being scared. The doctor offered me the ones that you sort of take when you get anxiety, and you could just take it every time. And that scared me because I had a friend who just had a real drug addiction after taking stuff like that. And I said,
Mm.
I don't want that.
Right.
So they gave me a time released form and I asked for the lowest dose. So thank you to that friend. So even though it was helpful with my anxiety, it kind of just curbed it, but I was still living with it on a daily basis because I
Mhm.
just was so addicted to it due to that
Yeah.
friend. So I could feel the anxiety that had already dissipated because sort of that underlying component that felt a little bit of like agitation and stuff had dissipated. So I had not numbed it to such a degree that I didn't notice a difference. And that's when I thought, maybe I actually don't need it anymore. And it's not to say that we'll ever 100% get rid of anxiety because I want to sort of smash that illusion. I know some people out there are like, oh, you get rid of your anxiety. You can, but like life is life and something else, like as you said, like cancer came up. And of course, like now this is something new and something different. And you might have worked on the thing before that had caused the anxiety, but something new stressful came up. And so it's like we just take it step by step and bit by bit. And when we think about human behavior, part of it as well is understanding that we're human, we're ebbing and flowing, we're going to have different challenges that come up, and we don't know what those challenges are going to drive within us. And so it's like kind of also having that self love and understanding for yourself that this is life, this is the ebb and flow. Yeah. And so I really try now, my goal is to just catch it, right? So it's like if anxiety comes up now, it's like, okay, well, let me catch it. Let me see what I can do. Let me see like if I can figure out what's driving it, which sometimes it's obvious, you guys. Sometimes it's something present day and I can work on it quickly. And sometimes it's some crazy trigger from like some old root wound from when I
Mhm.
was a kid. And those take a bit longer. So I just do my best to try to catch it so it doesn't get like too crazy
Mhm.
again. But that's the natural reality of life. Like I hope that you are embracing challenges and moving forward in them because that means that you're really like dedicated to something important and you're facing challenges and know that it might come up again. And
Yeah.
now we just have more tools.
I think that's what's pertinent for me, is that it's something that I take, but maybe I don't think I'm reliant on it. And I feel like if I wanted to stop now, I could. Which what happened was because I ran out and forgot to call the doctor to prescribe it again. When I got back on it, it like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I was
You're
like,
not used to
no, I wasn't used to it. So
it.
what would you say for people that are like that really don't want to continue to take it and look
Mhm.
for other things that would help them in the absence of that drug?
Yeah, and this is where it's like I asked my doctor like how to get off it when I got off it, right? And they sort of give you like a protocol to wean yourself off of it, and you want to be cognizant that this is like a drug and it does have like an addictive quality, like whether or not we actually get addicted. So I like that's why I went through the process. I was like I'm going to go through the process that they say because that's going to make your life easier. Right. So definitely check out like with your doctor and connect with them and see what's going on. And then the other dynamic too is like you want to like try to find out where that anxiety stems from. You might already know. I know some people think about this and they're like, well, I actually already know like what it stems from. Right? Like maybe you had some childhood trauma and you've had anxiety ever since. Then it's like, all right, well, who can you connect with that can actually help you to clear that and transform that? And it's like, whether it be myself, like I'm a coach and I like to work on those kind of deeper things as well. I'm a DeMartini facilitator. I love the DeMartini method. So plug for all the DeMartini facilitators out there. So John DeMartini, and he's really helpful, and he's a lot of facilitators worldwide. So even if you didn't connect with me, like that's a great like dynamic to connect with as well. I do highly suggest that. He has a really great anxiety protocol that we all utilize. So there's a lot of different dynamics of like how you can dive in and go to transform it. And it's like, who can you reach out to? Who can you find? Who do you know that already overcame it? Ask them for referrals. But it's really trying to like focus on like what works for you, you know? And then there's also day-to-day things that are just helpful. Like I love the inner work, but I also make sure to balance it with all the other stuff, you know? Like I love yoga. I find that that's really good for like clearing our energy in the body. You want to get like all stuck and anxious and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's really helpful. But I also really love like going to the gym. So I do boxing classes, which is really fun where I live now. When I was down by the beach, I would go outside and I'd rollerblade on like the little beach path and stuff. So I really find ways that I can get outside, I can get in nature, I can do all these different things to like balance out like these days and these dynamics. Because the reality is, you know, if anyone's selling you like this fantasy that every day is like the most amazing day, like of course, like I love my life and it is very inspiring. But I'm not going to sell some illusion that I don't have challenges that I'm working on a daily basis.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that I love the challenges. Like that's like what I try to help people understand is like I love the challenges. I created these challenges. It doesn't mean I'm sitting here like Disneyland, like this is so fun. I react. I'm human. I get frustrated. I get stressed out.
Part of
Yeah,
being
like
human, right?
that's normal. It's totally normal. And I have my own judgments and misperceptions and things to work on. And all
Yeah.
these are like signs and signals on a daily basis and things to overcome. It's just that I chose things that I want to overcome. So as opposed to waking up and being like, oh, I have to do all this crap. Like, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in my life. But I actually am really excited because like there's also things that I really want to overcome. And it's going to be really hard. But this is important to me. This is so important to me that I'll do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the difference. But then it's also being realistic that it is stressful. Like it can be stressful. And even though it's inspiring to you, we still have misperceptions that drive like distress in us. And so I balance it out with doing the inner work to shift my perceptions, but also like whatever helps me on the outside, you know, like whatever helps you on the outside and find your thing too, because you won't stick to it unless it's your thing.
I agree.
Yeah. So go test it.
I totally agree. I mean, you lived in Australia, kind of global experiences, right? Did that shape your understanding of human behavior, human challenges?
I think what it did for me is it really helped me to realize like there's so many different individuals on this planet, like living in a different culture. You know, I had the opportunity to live in Canada as well for a little bit. And so I've been in Canada, United States, and then Australia and kind of bounced around in
Nice.
Canada US and Australia a bit. So I've gotten to see all the different like cultural dynamics and stuff. And it's interesting because we can really become sheltered and get very stuck in our ways. So when it becomes like to human behavior, we have this perception and we get really caught up in what's right or wrong according to us. One of the gifts of traveling so much and living in these other countries and kind of engrossing myself in other cultures is I realize like it's right or wrong according to a culture. And we often subordinate to our own culture, not realizing you'll go somewhere else and you're like, this is not acceptable in the US, but like, man, this works really well here. So is it that it doesn't work here? Like, did it not work in LA or are they just like a different perception? And I was like, it's actually just a different perception. And you see how strong, no matter what culture you're in, it's all really like these perception based. And so it really helped me open my mind and open my heart to like the reality that like everyone has their own way of doing things. And it's not up to me to say like what's right or wrong. But like even now when I work with clients, it's up to me to find out what works best for you and help you to excel at like what you're most inspired by, you know. And even when I say this, like I know there's challenges that come in cultures too, but I find when people want to do personal development, like they just want to be of service. Like I don't have to worry about that. Like I'm not having like crazy things come forward. You know, like they just want to grow and be of service. Everyone at their core wants to be of service. As long as I tap into that, like everything's fine.
Yeah, when you talk to these people, when you get to it, like underneath it all, do you find that that's what they want? They just want to be of service.
They want to be of service and they want to be themselves. right? Like
Mhm.
I was working with an individual in India, right? And there was a perception that because I'm from America and I'm female, that I have all these other opportunities, right? And so it was interesting because we kind of dove in and we got to see how the perceived restrictions that this individual has gave them more opportunities than I have. And it's very humbling to see because all we're doing is seeing the other side. When you go in, it's like, okay, well, do you actually need to change that restriction level? And it's like, no, like I actually like the opportunities I have, and this is the form it comes in. And it's really humbling because even for myself, like I could sit there and say, oh, it's better to be a woman in the United States. But that's not true. I just haven't looked at the other side. So now I've had the opportunity to see the other sides and how these restrictions actually serve us and how they help people and how they help people to grow and how some of the freedoms I have can also be quite restricted. Like
Mhm.
everything has both sides. So when we're diving in and looking at these different dynamics, like we just want to see no matter what we're experiencing has both sides. If
Mhm.
something is too high on a pedestal, I'm going to label it as right. I'll probably be self-righteous in that dynamic and I'll think that I'm right and you're wrong, which by the way, nobody wants to hang out with that person.
Right.
Yeah, that's usually, by the way, when we get criticized and like, yeah, like we get criticized and then I know now like the reaction that we're gonna get from people, and I'm like, yeah, you're being self-righteous, Carly. Like, get off your little high horse, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So that's the feedback that we get, and then there's also that dynamic where it's like, but we're also not self-righteous, where we're putting ourselves in a pit and saying, well, your way is better. Because at the core of that, between the two, if we meet in the middle, we find your unique way and your unique self, you know. And it's
Mhm.
pretty cool because when we get to go and express ourselves in a way that we don't feel like we're repressing or mimicking someone, like we feel very calm, very neutral, very grateful. We just feel natural, you know. And that's part of like why I love to help people. It's like, let's get you on track, let's get you authentic, because I know in that state you have less emotions, you're more objective, you can face more challenges, you're more adaptable to change because you're really focused on things that ground you.
Mhm. On the
Mhm.
way to finding that inner self, that authentic self, what are the questions that people bring up all the time that kind of limits them to get into that place? Or is it?
Yeah. Should I do this? Am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do that? Yeah. I don't know. It's your life.
Yeah.
Like, stop asking someone else.
Right,
And
right, right.
it's your life. And I think this is the key too, is like when I work with someone, you're going to ask me that question 100%. And, you know, once people get to know me, they laugh because they're like, you're not going to tell me. And I'm like, no, I'm not. We're going to find out why you can't find the answer. Right. So if you're saying I should do this, I should do that, and you're asking all these people, should I do this or should I do that? You have some uncertainty in yourself. So you've lost a level of certainty in yourself. So my goal is to get you back that certainty within yourself so that at the end of like a consultation, we figure out like, what is it that's making you uncertain? You know, we find it, we clear that uncertainty, and then I ask the question, what do you want to do? Not what you think you should do, what you want to do. And it's really important to check in with the language, right? Like this is something that I'm hyper focused on when I'm in
Yeah.
consultations. Like, is this language? Because if I say, what do you want to do? And the client says, well, I think I should do this. And I said, then we're not done yet because you still have a should in there until they said, you know what, I want to do it this way. I can't wait to do it this way. I'd love to do it this way. This is the way I choose to do it. Then I know we got it. Then I know we got certainty. So anytime we hear should, supposed to, got to, need to, have to, must, right? That's not according to you. That's you subordinating to some outside authority because you lost certainty in yourself. But when you have certainty, you say, I'd love to, choose to, desire to, want to, right? And so that's quite inspiring as well. So it's really paying attention to that language because we want to get you back to your certainty because you truly know you the best, right? Like, and I work with a lot of business owners as well because I do a lot of business strategy stuff and business to business stuff. And it's the same in the business. Like, you know your business best. I'm not going to know your business as good as you. It's up to me to ask the quality questions to get you the certainty to pull the answers out within you. And that we just, you know, we just hunker down and you keep going until you get that certainty. Because those steps where you move forward into something that you would love to do, you're, like I said, you're going to be the most productive. You're
Right.
going to be the most resilient. You're going to be the most adaptable to change. You're going to be the most objective. So my main focus is like, let's get you that certainty. Because if I send you out in the world working on your shoulds and have tos, you know what's going to happen? You're going to procrastinate. You're going to hesitate. You're going to get frustrated with yourself. and you're going to judge yourself because you're not taking action on something, which is a should. It's not what you want to do. That's why you don't take action. Because
Yeah.
you should do it. Yeah.
Should do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have little nephews and everything, and they have that should word, but I always
Yeah.
say should doesn't exist. And then I have them have a different kind of language so that they can start to learn as a young people that, you can be definite in what your next step is and bring, like you said, certainty to whatever the vision of your life is. In finding the vision of your life and being authentic, how do you define authenticity?
Yeah, just being yourself, like pursuing that path that's most inspiring to you. So and I love this. It's BJ Palmer, by the way. He's the father of chiropractic, but he says it: take no credit, take no blame, just keep focused on your chief aim. I absolutely love that, because take
Oh,
no credit means it's not about being proud, right? It's not about being proud and puffing yourself up and all this external validation. Take no blame. It's not about being shamed. It's not about putting yourself down, right? Just keep focused on your chief aim. That's the telos. That's our end in mind. Right? That's the thing that's most inspiring and important to us. And so it's really about discovering what that is to you, which is not hard. This is not hard.
yeah.
Your life demonstrates what's most important to you. Based on just some of the things I shared, you could extrapolate and pull together these commonalities of what is most important to me, and you could see, like I've already kind of shared, like what my day looks like. And so if every day I'm focused on these things, that demonstrates that it has meaning to me. And it's cool because if you look at every day, what are you focused on? What can I rely on you for? That you're going to do no matter what, even if it's a hard day. You're going to start to write these things down and look at how your day pans out. And it's like, wow, like things are starting to repeat. Things are actually showing me that there's a real repetitive nature here. And that's your meaning. That's your purpose. Also, it's like the things that we invest finances in, right? Like we could say we can't afford things, but I have a good laugh with clients about this because I'm like, oh, you can't afford that? I'm like, but you just told me you bought this. And I was like, so can you not afford it? Or is it that you didn't want to purchase that and you'd rather invest in this because it's more meaningful? So it's really cool because you can pay attention. You can afford a lot more than you think, but you choose to invest in things that are most meaningful to you, and you'll go the extra mile and you'll stretch financially for those particular things, right? And so that's also an interesting dynamic as well. We also love to talk about these things, right? The things that we're most inspired to talk about. Like you'll become a complete introvert in a conversation and dynamic where people are not talking about things that inspire you, but you all of a sudden become an extrovert. I had a good laugh. One of my clients, she's going to start podcasting, right? She's going to start hosting. And she's like, how am I going to do it? What am I going to talk about? She's like, I've never done this before. I don't know if I'm a speaker. And I'm like, girl, I was like, you talk about things that are inspiring on this. And I laugh because I'm like, you're basically a podcaster sometimes on these calls. And as soon as she gets like a hit of what's inspiring, that girl just like flows and goes. And I can get 2 to 3 minutes of her at this top energy level because it energizes her so much to talk about it. And if I was talking about something that wasn't inspiring to her, she'd go back to introvert. Right. And it's like, that's it. Have a podcast on those topics and you're good to go. Right. And she started and she's good to go. She's a natural. And we're all naturals if we're speaking about things that are inspiring to us. Right. If I start talking about something that's not inspiring, I can't answer the questions, then I'm going to stumble and I'm going to be bored. Right. I'm not like special or unique. I'm just focused and I only apply to podcasts that have topics and subjects that I'm inspired by, right? Like that's it. Yeah. If I do anything else, I'm screwed, guys. I'm so screwed. I get all tripped up.
I feel you.
Yeah. But there are people in my life, like I have certain family members that genuinely perceive me as highly introverted because when I go to some of these events, they're just not discussing topics and things that inspire me. So we actually like go into the shell. Whereas most of my friends, because it's just they're all like in the similar industry, they're like, Carly can't shut up. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. No, I find myself that way too. Yeah. I find myself that way too. Like, I don't know the word in between extrovert and introvert. There's, I don't know, ambivert or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I find myself, I'm definitely extroverted. But if I'm somewhere and the topic is just not interesting, I'm just like mum's the word.
Yeah. Almost like we like black out and it's like, what'd you say?
I know.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Usually I'm a good listener.
Yeah. We were just kind of talking about purpose. Like, how do you identify that connecting to someone's purpose is like a key to fulfilling their
Yeah.
fulfillment?
Yeah, well, just look at your life, man. Your life demonstrates it. So all those things that I sort of just talked about that you can look at to see what's meaningful to you, like when you're involved in something meaningful, right? And I can give an example. Kids are a great example because kids bring a lot of meaning to people's lives, right? So like a lot of people, they'll talk to me about their kids and very specific experiences they've had with their kids, and you see them light up, right? You
Hmm.
see them light up and you see their energy shift and change because they had such a profound experience, right? And
Hmm.
so it's like that's why I mean, beautiful kids, right? Like it's a developing brain and it's so challenging, man. Like let's not even pretend that there's not insane challenges that come with
Right.
raising little humans, right?
Right.
It's insane. But because it's so inspiring, there's like this drive and this desire to continue and not just continue, but do it at like a high level.
Mm.
Right. And so that shows me that kids are like a top priority. And I use kids, but for those of you who are listening who are like, I don't feel that way about my kids, no judgment. That just means that kids aren't your top priority, but probably your spouses. So you're going to delegate to them and you might be focused on business and they delegate to you. It's no stress. That's the
Yeah,
perfection of relationships.
it's fair.
Yeah. It's not a good thing or bad thing. So it's really paying attention to that because it's like, those things and that is I love business, by the way. Like I love business. So it's like for me, it's like when something comes in business, it's like, okay, like this is hard, but I'll get over it. And it's like, what are the things that I can do next, even if it's a hard thing? And how do I like excel at this to like the greatest degree, right? And it's
Hmm.
like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to focus on. And that energizes me. That gives me energy. And so if I'm focused on something that every day energizes me, that every day makes me feel inspired, that every day is a challenge I want to overcome, wouldn't it be natural to assume that we're going to feel different? But
Yeah.
if I'm focused on something every day that it's frustrating to me and it drains my energy and I feel burnt out and I don't actually want to overcome the challenge, but I just have to because it's like the life I had set up for myself, like that is not going to make me feel inspired and fulfilled. That's going to drain my energy. I'm
Hmm.
going to feel heavy. I'm going to feel potentially like upset or depressed or whatever, like about my life. I'm going to wake up dreading the day instead of waking up looking forward to my day, no matter what I'm facing. And that's why it's like, no matter what I'm doing with someone, no matter what we're working on, one of the underlying factors is like at the end of a package, I want to get you focused on what that is. And I want to make sure that every day you're incorporating it because I know if I don't see you again for 5 years or something, because sometimes, people just like to work on things when there's like crazy urgencies, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better
Hmm.
every day. And I want you to feel better every day. And I want you to be more productive. And I want you to feel like more alive and fulfilled, right? And so it's massively important. So it's funny, like no matter what you work on with me, that's going to get in there. Getting snuck in there, whether you like it or not, but you'll thank me later. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was listening
Uh,
as I'm listening what you're saying, that just all of it just feels like fulfillment. You
yeah.
know, it just feels like fulfillment. And
Mhm.
I know in that, even trying to find your purpose and trying to be inspired. What's the difference between inspiration and motivation?
Yeah. Okay, so inspiration comes from within, right? So if I'm inspired to do something, right, I'll just do it no matter what. I'll do it naturally. But if I'm not inspired to do something, it will take an outside motivational force to help me get it done.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That just means it's not as much of a top priority. And so this is the difference between like I guess just like coaching in a sense of coaching to get you into inspiration and coaching as a motivator. So if I'm only motivating you and I'm only connecting with things that I need to like get on the call, be your accountability partner. I'm not an accountability partner. If you're not holding yourself accountable outside, we're not focused on the right stuff. That's
Uh-huh.
it. Right? Because once I'm gone, you can't pay me what you pay me every day, all day to hold you accountable. Like,
Right.
no. So it's like if you weren't accountable in between, it's no good or bad. It's like, let's reflect on that and see what you liked, what you didn't like. And let's get you focused on something that I don't have to hold you accountable to do.
Hmm.
That's inspiration. I don't have to hold you accountable. Motivation, I have to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a huge difference. And it's paralyzing and it's crippling. Right. It's definitely paralyzing and crippling. So if I'm only focused on those things, once I'm gone, you all of a sudden become like hopeless and helpless. And I'm like, I don't want that. So it's like, okay, what can we find that you're inspired from within to do? That in between my sessions with you, I see that you're taking action, moving forward, no ifs, ands, or buts. You're going to do this. You're going to do not just one thing, but many things. And it's like, that's inspiration, right? So there's no motivation needed, no outside forces needed to get you there. And sometimes this isn't to say like we can't have the outside forces, by the way, because I take a boxing class and I love it.
Mhm.
I love it so much. Will I sit at home and just practice boxing on my own? I won't. I am not going
Right.
to, right? But I do love the dynamic of going and learning from this individual. But I'm not trying to be a boxer. If I was trying to be a boxer, like if I'm my own client and I came and I said, hey, Carly, I want to be a boxer. I don't practice at home, but I take a boxing class a couple times a week and I definitely want to be a boxer. I would be like, not really. Because
Mhm.
I know that what it would take for me to actually be a boxer would be daily practice and intention and investing in that. And so it's not to say that we can't have these outside motivational forces, but you want to drop a fantasy just in case you're dedicating your life to something that you don't show evidence you don't have the internal inspiration to pursue,
Yeah.
right? And so that's the difference. Like we could definitely have fun with it, but like if it's something I'm dedicating my life to, I want to make sure that every day I wake up and do it no matter what, right? That if I don't have that outside motivation, I'm going to do it anyways. And then we just kind of like ebb and flow and play with life and like those smaller areas that it's like, yeah, I like boxing, but I'm definitely not dedicated to it. So I go to a class. Yeah.
There you go. Do you,
Yeah.
do you think that people have a fantasy about certain things that they put in their future, and then
Yeah.
that comes from what?
Yeah. This is a great question, right? Because there's, I really want to dive a little deeper. We're going to extrapolate what a fantasy is because you could have a fantasy. Like I can have a fantasy in my business, but I love business so much that it's just one part of the business, right? Or
Hmm.
I could have a fantasy on the whole business. So if I have a fantasy, let's say of entrepreneurship, let's say my fantasy is entrepreneurship, the way that I'll know that it's a fantasy is my life won't demonstrate that I'm moving into being an entrepreneur. I
Hmm.
may talk about it, I may like the idea of it, but I'm actually taking the actions to do it. No.
Hmm.
And so if I don't see actions there, then I know that that's not existing. That's not true. I had an individual who I was, working with, and they were really focused on being an actress, right? And it was
Hmm.
interesting because they're like, that's my dream, that's my dream. And when I started asking questions, I was like, okay, well, let's look at this. Like, what are you doing right now to become an actress? Well, nothing now. So that's why I want to work with you. And I was like, okay, so when was the last time you invested in it? 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And I said, so between 10 years ago and now, have you done anything? And they go, no, I just watch a lot of movies and I think about it. You do not want to be an actress. Like, also, you
Right.
live in LA. Like, you live in LA. Like, come on. Like, there's opportunities left and right to get
Left
rejected.
and right.
Um, so that demonstrates to me that this person has a fantasy and an unrealistic expectation on themselves to be an actress. But then it was like, what are you actually focused on every day? Like, what are you not hesitating on? What are you not procrastinating on? And we started to get all the details. It was their relationships and their business. And so when we cleared the fantasy of being an actress, they stopped trying to be an actress, just loved watching movies and enjoyed it, and then really got to stop beating themselves up and focusing on relationships and business. That was the top priority. How it extrapolates where it might not be like the whole thing is a fantasy and just a part of it, right? Because I
Hmm.
had an individual who I was working with who was like, oh, I'm stuck in my business, I'm stagnant in my business, and I should be doing all this stuff in social media and I'm not doing it. I should be doing like the webinars and all these things, right? Now, when I looked at their life, they were every day focused on their business, but they weren't able to push forward in the social media and marketing. So this is where I can see that the business is not a fantasy because there's action taken daily towards it, but the social media is the fantasy, right? And so this is the key. It's like, it's not that the whole thing's a fantasy, it's finding the parts that you're not doing on a daily basis, finding the little things that you're like, I need to do this, I should do this, but you're not invested in, and there's some sort of fantasy around there. In this particular case, when we cleared like the fantasy around social media, we uncovered this person does not like social media. Like, but they're a ninja at speaking and they love it live. And so it was like, okay, would you rather do social media now or do you just want to go put together these live workshops and speak in front of groups? And she's like, live. And I was like, done. I was like, yeah, because it was just this perception and subordination that I have to do social media when there's a whole world out there that doesn't give a crap about social media and not going to sign up with you. And she's already demonstrating she gets a significant quantity of clients from in person. So that was the fantasy of just a component. And so that's the cool thing to pay attention to. It's like, look at the fantasy. What is your life actually demonstrating? It's a fantasy and it's not actually going to occur if it's not important to you, right? And sometimes we work on it, like with that one case where it's like we worked on it and she actually didn't want to do social media, so she wound up doing it. So she just dropped it. You know, the individual who thought they wanted to be an actress just dropped it, you know, and just moved on. And sometimes, this is like the only other thing, sometimes, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up, there are things that we can't walk away from. Right? There are things that's like especially sales. Let's say sales. So you're not doing sales, but you're an entrepreneur. Like, good luck there. I'm like, you just
Gotta get
figuring it out.
that's
So it
important.
is yeah. It technically right now it's not meaningful for you. So it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy to think you're going to be the best salesperson, right? And there's a couple options here. If you can't drop something, because this is really important. Once you figure out this is a fantasy, I'm not going to do it. If you can't drop it and you can't walk away from it, right? Then it's time to think, who can I delegate it to?
Yeah.
Delegation's a huge component, and find the person who loves that dynamic that you hate. So there's the delegation component there. And then there's also the dynamic of, you know, if you can't afford to delegate, I call it like we link it, right? We link it to what's important to you. So if I love personal development, and I had to do this with sales, by the way, I love personal development, growth. I understand that that's important to me. I was like, how does it help my personal development to do sales? And I just kept answering that question over and 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 over again, like hundreds of times, until I got a tear of inspiration. And I was like, I can't wait to do sales.
Really?
Yeah, because I couldn't drop it in the beginning. In the beginning, I couldn't delegate it. And now I actually don't want to delegate it. I love it so much and I get so much value out of
Hmm.
that I know eventually, I may have to. Listen to me, I have to. I don't want to. I love it so much because I got so many links to it that now it's fulfilling, right? But in the beginning,
Yeah.
I hated it. So it's like, yeah, that's another reflection to have as well.
So well, I would just say this, like in my business, I know that it's important for not necessarily social media, but marketing. Um, and it came to a point where like, I just couldn't do it. And so I had to delegate it. I had to, you know, get someone from the outside to start to do the marketing. And I love the fact that somebody else is doing it. That means I can focus on the more artistic and, you know, creative things that I love to do with my business, which is, you know, which inspires me. So that's why I wake up in the morning at 5:30 or whatever and do my thing, you know, personal and, you know, physical. And then I get to business. But I'm inspired every day because I relinquish all the stuff that I had a fantasy about, you know, and I was faking myself out. Like, I guess I'm doing marketing by doing a little bit of something and getting no return. So I was like, dang, I'm just faking myself out. And I had that
Yeah.
realization and finally passed it on. So it's a pleasure not to have it especially when I don't want it.
It's a game changer too, because it's like
Yeah.
now every day you wake up and you're like, oh, I have to do marketing, and you're like, nope, I'm just gonna have someone else do that, and I just
Yep.
get to focus on what I love.
Exactly. And that
Um,
brings me to my next point. You know, individuals can get stuck or stagnant. Stuck is in the world of, you know, movement. That's what it is. I know stuck is not a real thing for human beings, but one can feel stagnant. Um, is there like a deeper issue behind why people feel stagnant? Or what is that?
yeah. So you're stuck because you're not moving forward, and you're not moving forward because you're confused. And you're confused because you've compared yourself to all this stuff and all these people and all this crap out there,
Very
and you
good.
got all
Yeah.
these shoulds in your head. And
Hmm.
so when we're stuck and we're sitting there and like, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Like, that's not you. That's not what you want. Like, when you are certain on what you want, what do? You just want to move forward and you want to take action on it because it's important to you. Right. And so it's like the top thing is like when someone's really stuck, I find out like, who are you comparing yourself to? What do you think your life should be like, supposed to be like? You know, I was just working with an individual, excuse me, who was just stuck. And she was like, I don't know if I should be an entrepreneur or if I should get a job. And it was crazy because when we started to see who they were comparing themselves to, it was family members, right? And
Mm.
they were comparing themselves to certain family members who had these certain expectations on them. But the truth is, and we got this was the moment we started to talk about like past jobs and stuff. And then they said, they were like, this is why this one was wildly inspiring. And they're like, man, if I could do that again, that would just be wildly inspiring. And then they sort of disconnected and they're like, I think I should do the entrepreneurship though. And I said, stop. I was like, stop right there. I was like, you just got lit up. Your whole energy shifted, like the whole body like lifted up. Your breath was lighter, like everything. And all I heard was wildly inspiring. I was like, so
Mm.
why do you think you should be an entrepreneur? You know, and then it kind of was the comparison to some friends of theirs that had already like had entrepreneurship business and had really launched. So when we cleared the comparisons, funny enough, like now they're out in the job market. They're almost there. They almost got it. But now they're looking for that job that's wildly inspiring, right? And it's like, that's what they really wanted. And it was the core of what they wanted. But there was so many shoulds in their head because there was comparisons to family, disappointing dad, disappointing mom, disappointing brother and sister, you know,
Mhm.
disappointing friends. Where the truth is like, while you're so worried about disappointing everyone else, you disappointed yourself. And now you're stuck and stagnant, not moving forward into something that, as they said, is wildly inspiring, you know?
Yeah.
So when you're stuck, I like to figure out who you're comparing yourself, where are the shoulds coming from, where are the have tos. Let's clear the crap out of those and let's figure out like what's that inspiring thing for you. And
Mhm.
then you move forward and it's like, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. There's so many questions I have in my head right now. I'm trying to figure out. Well, let's talk about since like the people that you worked with. They were in one place, they saw this light and there was a transformation. What are some signs that people are really ready to transform their life from that language of should to I am inspired
Mhm.
by and the beingness and doingness of who they are?
Yeah, I mean, there's a willingness to work on it. Like, there just the reality is you just want to work on it, right? You want to work on it. You want to work on it. You want to move through it. You understand you're in a pattern, and part of reaching out is part of the help. And
Mhm.
if I'm in a session with someone and they want to work on it, and I can ask some questions around it, I just know they just want to get it done, you know,
Mhm.
because sometimes it's hard. If someone doesn't want to work on it, I don't see this as like a good or bad thing, but I like to check in and find out why, right? So they might just be like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, funny enough, this is why we're here. And I'll just ask the question, can we figure out why? Because you might be getting something out of this that you haven't quite yet seen. And then when we start to see like the strategy behind potentially being stuck,
Mhm.
sometimes you're not actually stuck. Sometimes there's a pause there that serves a purpose. And then once we find why that purpose is served, we look and we say, okay, how long is it necessary to be there? Because this is the first step before the next step. And then they give me a time frame and I'm like, great. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, basically, sometimes it's only like 2 weeks or something. And I'm like, okay, cool. Do you want to reconnect on this one in 2 weeks and see how it goes? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, great. What do you want to work on today then? What's the top priority? Because that's not the top priority. Because you have 2 more weeks of doing what you're doing before you can get to the next step.
Yeah.
We have all these judgments in our head of what life is supposed to look like. Part of asking the questions is finding out, and this is why I love human behavior. We are purposeful human beings. Why are you stuck? There's also a reason why you're stuck. You're also getting some sort of benefit out of it, and I want to know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because if there's a benefit that maybe is challenging, like sometimes people just get over supported, you know, and they're just like scared to do things on their own, then it's like, great, you're over supported, and now we found out you're scared to do things on your own. Let's build up that confidence and that self-worth to make sure that you know you're capable of doing this without this over support. You know, or sometimes, like I said, it's like a time frame or a period, and it's like, great, what's the time frame that this personal step you're in right now is necessary to go through before we go to the next step, you know,
Mm.
and we get all that data and details. So again, we really have a lot of judgments on how the things should be, not realizing that things are the way that they're meant to be. And when we ask questions, we can use the situation as a tool to help us dive deeper into what's next, you know, or just like let the situation be. And instead of fighting it, you can get through that particular situation more quickly because now you know why it's there. And so you're like, well, now I know why it's here, I know how to use it, So it's a really cool dynamic.
How does one get out of the world of judgment of themselves?
Time, and you'll never ever fully get out of it. So don't judge yourself for being in judgment. It's impossible to ever completely transcend judgment. So yeah, even it's funny because like even the word, like a lot of the gurus, they talk about enlightenment and the like I'm enlightened. I'm like, you're not enlightened. The whole meaning of the word is in light. In light. You're in light. So if you're in light and you're a spirit, you don't exist. This body is physical matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you can't ever be enlightened, right? Like it's more about enjoying the human journey and like enjoying the experience and loving these ebbs and flows. So the reason why we can't ever transcend judgment, but we can really work on it and help ourselves accelerate our growth and move to like, I like to call them higher levels of judgment in a sense, right? And it's not really like a higher level, it's just that you're moving forward in your inspired purpose. So your judgment starts to transform. So for example, podcasting, right? So it's like your first podcast, you're stressed out, you're nervous, you're probably comparing yourself to a lot of people, right? And
Right.
that's the particular judgment, right? But
Yeah.
then now you're podcasting for a lot longer and you're probably comparing yourself to some top podcasters, right? Then one day you'll be at that top podcasting stage. Who are you comparing yourself to then? I'm not sure. But we keep going through these different judgments, right? So the first time I spoke, it was like in front of two people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when I first spoke in front of two people, it felt just as stressful as when I first spoke in front of 50 people. And one day, if I'm in a stadium with 10,000 people, you don't think I'm not going to have some sort of judgment? Like,
Right.
that's the first time in front of that quantity of people. I don't have any illusion of that. I can sit in front of the 50, the 100, 500 and feel comfortable, right? But if I get in front of a 10,000 person group, my brain's like, whoa, can I do that? And immediately I judge myself because now I've questioned my capability, right? That's normal. I haven't done it yet. And I'll compare myself to all the people, which is funny. I think about all the speakers and stuff that I've seen talk in front of groups that large. And the first person that came to me was Brene Brown, by the way. So there it is right there. And I'm just kind of giving you an example of how our mind works. Is my immediate judgment and comparison with Brene Brown can do it, but I'm not sure I can.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I've compared myself to her. I've placed a judgment on myself, right? I've just placed a judgment on myself. And once I get to 10,000, if I ever want to talk in front of a million, like what's next? And I was like, well, who does talk in front of a million? And I was like, I think the Pope does when he does speeches and stuff. And it's like, whoa, cool. And so it's like, it's not that we're ever going to get rid of it, but if I work on this one, then I get to move to the next one and the next one. And the faster that we get to learn how to move through these judgments, the faster we get to expand to that next level, which is super cool because life is short.
Yeah.
Life is really shorter than
It
we
really
think.
is. It really
Yeah,
is.
and even if I think I want to live to a certain age, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what could happen. I could
No.
walk in the street and get hit by a car. I don't know. So it's like, my thing is like, let's just get on it. Let's get inspired. Let's get fulfilled, and let's do the best that we can with like what we have today. And
Right.
so, yeah, that's why it's worth really working on all these judgments so you can accelerate it and get more of those life experiences in the time that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With all this, well, first I want to say that I guess when you go from level to level, the level of judgment does change. But like you said, it's, it will be there, and it's really, I guess, accept and acknowledge what they are when they are. I had a podcast before this and talking about comparison, and what comparison myself to myself is okay. You know what I mean? But comparison myself or someone compare themselves to someone else, it doesn't really work because, it's like I'm in chapter 1 and I'm comparing myself to someone's chapter 20,
Yes.
and,
Yes. That it's so I was working on that with someone recently because they were comparing themselves. They're a newer coach, super brilliant, super brilliant. But they've only been like they've just been studying their whole life and super brilliant like woman. And they've been in the coaching business for 5 years and they're comparing themselves to one of their mentors who's been in the business for like 55 years. And I'm like, this is not an apples to apples situation. Like I can definitely clear the judgment. We're going to help you see what you have in like what you see on the outside. I'm going to help you see what you have on the inside. But there's some real unrealistic dynamics here. You are not going to have the business this individual has. It took them 55 years to get there. And part of it was it's like the trial and error along the way, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And it's not to say that you're not going to learn from this individual and they're going to help you with some of these trials and errors to make it faster, right? And that's part of the benefits of having like coaches and mentors and stuff. But simultaneously, like, don't expect to have a 55-year-old business in 5 years, like simultaneously. And so that's why those comparisons can really paralyze us, because you're comparing yourself to these people who have spent their whole entire lives like doing this thing that maybe you just started, you know? And so that's really important. But when we use like the comparison as a tool, like it's like, oh, well, you know, like what's interesting is they have this and they're doing this for 55 years. And then it's like, okay, well, they have all this and they do all this stuff and they're doing workshops and they're traveling. And it's like, yeah, let's compare to that. And it's like, well, instead of saying, I don't have that, so I'm a bad person or I'm not good enough or all this stuff, it's like,
Right, right,
how about, do I want that?
right.
Would that be inspiring to me? And then if it is, go look at what works for them, see if you like that dynamic, and only take the bits and pieces that work, right? Because if you try to mimic the whole thing, remember that person created something in 55 years that really fits and suits them. But I bet there's little components that you're like, I love doing this and I love doing that, but I don't want to touch that part of what they're doing.
Exactly,
and
exactly.
and that's where you can sort of like pull out pieces that are inspiring without paralyzing yourself,
Yeah.
right? And I love what you said too, because it's like comparing yourself on your own journey, right? So it's like last year compared to where I was last year, am I comfortable with the progress that I made for this year? And I'm like, realistically, for sure, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And I look back and I'm like, there's certain things that I didn't achieve in the time frame that I wanted, but then I'm like, then I look and I'm like, that was also unrealistic. And I'm now, it's like the more that you do this and the more that you look back and you say, did I achieve what I wanted? Was it realistic to achieve it in that time frame? Or now am I looking back like it wasn't realistic? And some of them, like, it wasn't realistic.
It wasn't
And then
really.
other things, yeah, it wasn't realistic. And other things I'll look and I'll be like, ooh, I didn't account for like this other thing that was more important. So this got like sidebarred. And I was like, am I upset about that? And I'm like, no, because I
Mm-hmm.
focused on the top priority. And so when we go back again, it's not judging even yourself when you compare like your progress. Like you actually want to see if something got sidebarred and didn't move forward, why was it sidebarred, right? And sometimes it's sidebarred because we just have like a fear or something. I'm like, well, I didn't address that. And
Mm-hmm.
that slowed me down there. So I'll look at that and I'll be like, top priority, address that fear, work on that ASAP, because I can see that that's slowing me down. You know, so we want to go look and almost extrapolate our life like we're looking at a business. Like if you're a profit and loss, you don't look at a profit and loss and say, shame on you. Like, shame on you for not doing what I said you did.
That
You're
profit
like,
and loss.
yeah, you look at your profit and loss and you're like, oh, this didn't happen because of this, and this didn't happen because of this. And I want you to look at yourself that way as well. And then when you look at that, you're more objective and then you know how to move forward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the objectivity, not necessarily the emotion, the feelings of it.
For sure.
Yeah. And in all of that you were talking about, just making a slight switch is when you're recognizing things and you're trying to um, live a life by your design. How do you define that?
The values and the purpose dynamic. I want everyone, listen to it again, listen to the part where I talked about how to identify what's meaningful to you,
Okay.
like how things kind of show up in your life and all the repetitive things that you're inspired to do. And then I want people to genuinely sit down and think, how can I do these things every single freaking day and plan around it? You're already going to be naturally doing it, but I want you to add the extra by planning around it. I want you to organize your schedule around it. I want you to look at your job. If you're working, does your job like align with something like that? And if it doesn't, can you give yourself permission to find a career path that would fill your soul? You know, or there might even be, I've had this before too, people who have jobs within a company where they're like, this one's not like feeding me. And I'm kind of like, oh, I have to be here. Where when I do this particular component, I'm like, wow, I can't wait to wake up and come to work. If you tell your bosses that, you know, like there might actually be a position that they can put you in and they're like, yeah, you are more productive here. You know, a great company and like a great manager will want to put you in a position that you're more productive. And if you say, I want to be more productive, like that also is helpful. If it's a business that you want to create, like, what does that business look like? If you want to spend more time with your kids, like I had a client who wanted to spend more time with their kids. So they're coming up with a way that they can create like a side job in a sense that would allow them to invest that time to travel with their kids. It's all these different things that, like, what's meaningful to you? How do you create a life that you can actually do that? One of my mentors said one time that a question that he asked is like, how can I make money doing what I love? Right. He just said, keep asking the question. And I trusted him because, quite frankly, I was like, I love the question and I want that answer so bad. And everything that I love to do, which sometimes costs a lot of money, because transparently, I'm very into, like, one of my life purposes, it's restoring and maintaining natural beauty. I love it. That comes in houses, architecture, like I'll definitely build a house, but like if you see me buy a house, I'm gonna go for some mid-century modern thing and like restore it. Like, it is expensive, by the way. It is expensive, and I love fashion, and I'm like, oh, it's just so inspiring. And I like travel around the world. No matter where I go, I find places to shop, and the places where there's usually nowhere to shop, I find it, and I'm like, look at this, and the construction, I go crazy. So I love it, and that question he made me ask over and over again about that stuff. How do I make money doing what I love? And so even when I'm shopping, I just ask that question. How do I make money doing this? How do I make money doing this? How do I make money doing this? And eventually I started to come up with ideas, and I started to get insights. And now my long-term future goals include ways that I can make money shopping. And I'm like, that I can make money like with architecture and all this stuff and art. And I was like, and it all sort of came together in like this little package. And I remember when it hit me, I looked at my husband and I was like, I did not see this, but my life like demonstrated that I've been involved in this dynamic forever. And now that's my long-term goal. And so just ask that question all day, every day, even if you don't get an answer, because I promise you, like, the more you ask the question, the more your brain starts to focus on, like, how do I find that answer? And then eventually it starts to link together. And when it started to link together, I was like, thank you. I can't wait to make money shopping.
Yeah,
I was like, thanks. Dream come true for me.
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So great question.
Yeah, and so for anyone that's watching or listening, depends on which medium, if they're at step zero, level zero,
Yeah.
and they hear the question, how do I live my life by design? It's right.
Yeah.
Start by asking the questions.
Yeah.
That, I guess, that inspires them.
Yeah. The thing is like, think about it this way. If every day you ask yourself, what's wrong with me? What do you eventually convince yourself? That there's something wrong with you.
Something wrong with you, yeah.
For sure. But if every day you're like, I wonder why I'm stuck. What could it be that's keeping me stuck? And every day you ask that instead, what do you think would happen? You would start to answer that question, and you would start to think, well, I'm not just stuck because there's something wrong with me. Like, there must be something going on. And then the deep dive naturally comes in, and you attract people and experiences to start to answer that question. And you're paying attention to it because now the mantra is a quality question. It's like when people say doing affirmations, right? Like the take no credit, take no blame, just keep focused on your achieving. That's definitely one of my affirmations. I usually think about it. I love it, by the way. And funny enough, just another side note, whenever I tried to use it one time as a tool when I'm very scared of heights and very afraid of heights. And we went on like this adventure that just had train bridges everywhere, and I was on a bike and it was just thousands of feet under me. And I just kept saying that over and over again, and it cleared my anxiety, right? Because that was the affirmation, not pride, not shame. It's not about fear. It's just about focus on your chief aim. And my chief aim was I really wanted to overcome this, and I really wanted to do this trail, right? So it's really cool. So it's like, find those, when we have those affirmations, we know that's the power of the affirmation. You repeat it over and over again, and that was the result that I got. Right. And so that's why the affirmations are so important. So now, instead of saying an affirmation, what's wrong with me? I'm a ground zero. I can't do this. Like, what is the affirmation that could be a quality question that's getting your brain to see things differently? And so all of a sudden now, every time I do something I love, my brain naturally is hooked on and programmed to think, how can I create an inspiring income doing this? right? Because I've asked it so many times over and over and over
Right.
again.
Right.
And now I'm programmed to think, and this is me reprogramming myself. Instead of like when something's wrong, what's wrong with me? Even if I get like a hit of like, what's wrong with me? I'll immediately say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just missing like something, Carly, because I am reprogramming my brain to understand a truth, right?
Mm.
And because of that, I'm paying attention to that to a greater degree. So change the quality of your questions. Get creative with your questions. Even in those moments, ask yourself how you can reframe those questions so you could retrain your brain to see yourself and things differently. Change the questions.
Change
Yeah.
the quality of the question.
Yeah.
I love that. Wow, I love that. In your journey, what has made you most happy?
Just doing the things that I love all the time. Like, yeah, and really making sure that I incorporate that. Yeah, and it's not even happy, it's actually just fulfilled. And
Fulfillment.
like guys, I'm not like when I say it's important, I mean it's important because it's the clothing thing can be really discounted very quickly, like societally, like that could be judged very efficiently, effectively. I've judged it in myself. But like I bought something on vintage recently. Super excited. And I got it in and I put it on and I actually like I was so inspired by the garment and the construction and the material and it was just so beautiful and I put it on and I call every time I buy something I'll call my husband and he gets a fashion show and I cry tears of inspiration. Like I'm so inspired by it, right? And so I could sit there and say I shouldn't do this because it's vain or it's this or that, but it's not to me. It's actually fulfilling and inspiring. So if every day I'm focused on creating opportunities, like even with shopping, like obviously like I value my finances, so I'm cautious, but at the same right, like I value finances, so I can't just like go crazy, but I don't just stop it. When I tried to just stop it, I actually had a harder time saving and investing money because I was like, well, what am I saving it for? Like I know that it's great for me long term, but like now I can't have things that are inspiring. And when I started to just moderate it in a sense, like it really opened it up and I save and invest more and I make more because I'm simultaneously building my long-term future while not robbing myself of things that are truly inspiring. So it's really important to get through those judgments. I love to share the fashion one because it's so easy for us to judge and just pass off as like crap, right? And so
Mhm.
whatever you're thinking in your mind that's fulfilling and inspiring that maybe you passed off as crap, stop.
Mm.
Just stop and figure out a way to incorporate it every day in a way that's inspiring. Which sometimes if I'm not like, if I can't shop and I can't afford it, sometimes I just look at pictures of runway or I have fashion magazines and stuff. Like I find a way to connect with it in ways that are important to me and inspiring. So that's really important. Find
Yeah,
the ways, focus on what you love, get the things that fulfill you. And if you're judging that, do it anyways and work through those judgments along the way.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
it. Carly, what legacy do you hope to leave through your work and your life's purpose?
Yeah, I would love to create like these experiences, like concrete experiences that help people transform their lives, their minds, really connect them with their purpose and what's inspiring to them. Part of it through coaching, like there's some other inspiring stuff that I'd love to create. Like I'd love to create hotels one day. Like to me, you travel, you explore, you get out of your headspace and you
Mm.
see all these different things that light up your mind and make you like remember. Like you've forgotten all the things that fulfill you. Well, and you go home invigorated and you want to implement things. I want to create experiences that allow people to do that. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Carly, your energy is, I've never used this word, but I'm going to use it, vivacious. It's a
Yeah.
vivacious type of energy that you have. And to share your mind, your knowledge, your experiences in this hour or so, it's really appreciated. And I know that anybody that connects with you will get connected to themselves authentically and find whatever that next thing is for them. And how does one get in touch with you and be coached by you?
Yeah. So head on over to my website, which is the westcoastgrowthadvisors.com. Yeah. And you can reach out to me directly there. That's a great start.
Yeah, and we'll have your information in our write up and everything. And I could, like, you're another person I could just have a conversation with, like, for another hour. But I
Yeah.
know time is time. And so I do appreciate you being on the Thrivewell Journey podcast. Thank you very much. And for all the listeners and watchers, you know, what we say about this time is let's make thriving our new normal. Carly, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate you.